Hi, and welcome to today's session of the Natural Birth Summit. Today's topic is birth partners and natural birth, and we're fortunate to be joined by Sallyann Beresford. Hello, Sallyann.
Hello, Adam. Thank you for having me.
Good to see you. Sallyann Beresford is an experienced birth doula and antenatal teacher of 22 years, and is based in the UK, where she runs her education business, Birthability. Sallyann is an award-winning author of 2 best-selling books, Labour of Love and The Art of Giving Birth. Sallyann also hosts a weekly popular podcast called the Ultimate Birth Partner Podcast, where she loves to chat with birth keepers and other experts about pregnancy, birth, and parenting. Sallyann is passionate about helping pregnant women and their partners develop their own personal philosophies of birth, and offers information and support to ensure they feel empowered, as well as positive and fully prepared. Okay, let's get started, Sallyann. I'd like to get started by asking the question, what is a birth partner and why does it matter?
Great question. The birth partner is somebody that you've chosen to take with you to your birth experience, and ideally someone who has, got a really good understanding about what you want to achieve. And most of us, let's face it, would choose our romantic partner if we are involved in a relationship, and we would, assume that they would be the person that we would take. However, not all partners are the perfect birth partner. So I think there's, for some people, they may go on to choose to have somebody else join that team, perhaps a friend or a relative, a doula, or someone else that they deem to be a good fit for their journey. And what's important about the role of a birth partner is they need to really understand everything about you as a person, so your personality style, and also that perfect birth experience that you're hoping for. Because if you don't have the right support, you're better off with no support. And I know that sounds really harsh, but honestly, I do believe that birth partners can literally make or break the experience if they get things wrong. And in this context, we're talking about natural birth. So I'm going to assume anyone listening really does want a birth that is untouched or unmedicated as possible, something where they are relying on their hormones and their body's physical abilities. I mean, I know all of your other guest speakers will cover this so beautifully, and talking about the way that the body is capable of achieving so much. And you can't go to that birth with a birth partner who doesn't understand that too. Do you know what I mean?
I do. Yeah, I get that. And so there's a need to really think through who might be a good birth partner, but also to explore with them, it sounds like, what your thinking is, so that you can test whether they can be on that journey with you. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think what's important is that there isn't this automatic assumption that they have the right to be with you. So, if I'm talking to birth partners, I will say, if she wants a home birth and you don't think that's a good option for her, are you the right person to support her? Because at the end of the day, that's something she feels that she would like, and you should support that by learning and understanding why that matters to her, and also learning and understanding what the statistics are around home birth, etc. I mean, that's just one example, but if she tells you that's what she wants, you don't have the right to turn around and say, well, you can't do that. That's not safe. I don't believe that's a good option for you to have the baby there. You owe it to her to do more research and understand more about why that's a good option. And the reason I say that is because women are they have the most amazing instincts. And the minute you start backing a woman into a corner, her instincts can switch off, and we wouldn't want that. We would want her instincts to be, flowing in abundance. And the last thing we should do is back her into a corner. So, for example, if that was the story that you were facing, that the woman wants to give birth at home and you don't believe that's a good option, my advice to any birth partner is just let her follow her instincts and trust what's going on. And if at any point in the journey that isn't safe for her, she will be the one to change her mind. She will be the one to decide a different path, because she's never going to put herself or her baby in danger.
That is very interesting. I think that what you're also making me think about is that this is a new dynamic, isn't it, between if he is your romantic partner, you're talking about having as your birth partner. There's a new dynamic there, and so the sort of whatever habits you've already formed around how you evaluate and discuss and decide things together, they don't necessarily apply directly in this space, because, as you say, this is much more focused on the mother and her. It's her ability to stay in a relaxed state and feel supported requires a change from the habitual decision-making process. Is that right?
Absolutely. And, you will have already heard people talk about hormones and the role that they play. And, if the partner doesn't understand that kind of mammalian ability to go inwards, to relax, to soften, if they don't understand how to help that happen, labour can be long, labour can be difficult, labour can be exactly the opposite of what you're probably planning. So it's really essential that the partner puts in the work to understand the role that hormones play, and to understand why it's important that the right hormones are produced at the right time. Because when you do get that, that's when you can be the best possible birth partner. And to be honest with you, there's very little else you need to do other than, snacks and drinks and a few other bits and pieces that she might tell you she wants in the pregnancy. But being a listening ear for that and looking out for those things, does the person you're supporting want you to touch them? Or would that be absolutely the worst thing to do? If she forgets to breathe, does she want you to kneel down on the floor beside her and start breathing? Or would she punch you in the face because that's the most irritating thing that you could do? You need to identify what those things are. You need to be able to say, okay, in this kind of scenario, if you forget to breathe, do you want me to just say the word breathe? Do you want me to start counting the breath? Do you want me to touch you on the shoulder to remind you, breathe, you've got this, you're doing great? What are the cues that you need to know in advance that will help support her in that moment? Because you'll see it and you need to know what to do. You need to have that tool in your toolbox to recognize what she wants from you in any moment that occurs like that.
I can see that it is a really big conversation to have between a mother and the other parent, isn't it? Because the assumptions are in the room, aren't they? Which is that it's going to be that person, the other parent, that's going to be the birth partner, and that somehow that's something wrong with everyone if that's not the case. But it seems like we're trying to find a middle ground between encouraging the other parent to engage, to be part of this discovery and learning process, to understand what the right route is without being controlling, and that is quite a difficult balance to find, I think, isn't it?
I think when a birth partner sits down and understands what birth is like, what it's like in terms of the physical body, what the body goes through, what the journey of the baby is like, once they understand more about the process, that's when they can say, okay, I get it now. I shouldn't be on my phone. I shouldn't be asking questions all the time. I shouldn't be trying to entertain the midwife with my brilliant jokes. I need to be present, I need to be quiet, and I need to be supportive. And perhaps I also might need to advocate if an occasion arises where I need to step up and speak up. And these things all need to be discussed in the antenatal period. And I would recommend having 2 sessions at least where you've got no phone, you've got no telly on, you've got no distractions. If you've got other children, childcare, or, go out for the evening or something where you can sit and focus entirely on each other and speak openly, because there's another side to it. You mentioned the word control. And for me, one of the hardest things to do is when you've got a woman who's a control freak and she can't get out of her head and into her body. So she's told you she wants a natural birth. She's told you that she wants to perhaps have a water birth, either in a midwife-led unit or at home, for example. But on the day, she can't relax and she can't switch off. How do you help her in that moment? How can you sit with her in the pregnancy and express these worries, express these thoughts to them and say, look, one of the things that I'm concerned about is that you're telling me that you want a natural birth and you want to, hypnobirth or do something to allow yourself to relax. But I know you quite well, and I think you might struggle with some elements of that. What can we do together in preparation for your dream birth to ensure that you are able to relax more? What can we do in practice? What can we, do we need to do scripts, hypnobirthing scripts more often? Do you want to, practice some massage techniques? Shall we try positions so that we can look at our house and determine where you're going to be in labour? Because what you've got to remember is, assuming that no induction takes place, and we are talking about natural birth, so I would hope not, you are going to be starting labour at home, regardless of whether you continue at home or not. So you need to look at your home in a way together that you can really identify: have we got enough cushions for me to lean over? Have I got a blanket? Is it too bright in this room? Will I need to put some darker curtains up at the windows? Will I need to, get an eye mask, for example, because that's, easier? What playlists do you want? Have I got an idea about the kinds of snacks that you really do want to sustain you through your labour? And what would I bring out, because I know that those are your favourite things. All of these really crucial elements need to be discussed, because honestly, as a doula, when I go to client appointments with second timers who've had really difficult or negative first birth experiences, one of the most common issues when we unpick what went wrong is that they didn't eat or drink. Neither of them. They didn't eat or drink throughout the entire first birth. And that's why things couldn't progress, because they were depleted. They weren't, in a position where they had enough energy to continue. So I think it is important that all of these things are covered.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Talk a bit more about the question of supporting in when a woman's in active labour and through to the birth and arrival of the baby. And you touched upon, you talked about the need to help support the mother to be in the relaxed state where she can, the hormone system can enter the dance with the baby and help move the labour along. You also mentioned the question of advocacy. Could you just talk a bit more about advocacy, and then go on to talk about other things that the partner needs to do beyond those things? And I think you mentioned eating and drinking.
Sure. So my advice is always, from the outset of early labour, is stay out of her way. So I would always recommend to any one of my clients, don't wake your partner when you feel that first sensation. Keep it to yourself and let them sleep, especially if it is the middle of the night. If they're at work, leave them at work. There is nothing they can do for you in early labour. As oxytocin is slowly beginning to build, there is no one that can do anything in that early stage. So just, leave them sleep. That's important. As the birth partner does start to wake up or comes home from work and they can see or they're aware that labour is progressing, I would say, again, stay out of their way. If it's a second baby and you are planning a home birth, for example, you might want to do some practical preparation, blowing up the pool, getting things ready. There's no harm in, being organised and prepared. But again, try and do that in a separate room. Try and invite her into a cosy space away from the area that you're doing all of that noisy work, and it can be very distracting and diminish the production of oxytocin. So in the early stages, very much stay out of her eye line, out of her way, don't ask questions. I would recommend in the birth planning sessions that you have going through the birth bag, because regardless of where you're giving birth, the birth bag should contain all of the things that you as the birth partner would need to access in that birth experience, so that you can grab the snacks, the drinks, the eye mask, the essential oils, or anything else that she's told you that she wants. So make sure you know where that is and what's in it for you to use. And then as labour progresses, you may start to hear sounds, you may start to notice certain behaviours. I would say routine, ritual, rhythmic behaviours that start to form a pattern. That's something that you're looking for. I definitely wouldn't time anything. If she's timing it, that is keeping her in her analytical brain. So no contraction apps, they're just not necessary, because they are only going to diminish that production of oxytocin. If you are starting to think, are things progressing? What you can do is look at the clock at, let's say it's 10 past 10, and look again at 20 past. How many sensations has she had in that time? Roughly how long did they last? So you've got a little bit of an idea. And if that clearly shows that things are starting to build and ramp, and they're getting to a point where you might need support, I still wouldn't say too much, just because normally, instinctively, the woman will ask for support when she's ready. If you are worried and you are thinking, well, actually, I do think things are getting a bit, close here, we do need to call the hospital, call the midwife to the home birth, whatever, then obviously you can kneel down and have a conversation with your partner about what to do and how they're feeling. But always be guided by them, because to me, the woman's instincts are spot on, and she is unlikely to not be aware of what's going on within her own body. So you, as the outsider, should really try and trust that as much as you can. But when the time comes, you are probably going to be the one making that call, be the one, picking up the phone and explaining what is going on to the midwife about the partner. But overall, the rest of the time, I would just say ensure she's going to the toilet regularly, at least once every hour to 2 hours, I would say, is a good guideline, purely because we want the bladder to be empty. Don't be asking her questions all the time. What's really important is that you put a glass of water or something similar beside her and say, your drink is here. You don't need to constantly say, would you like a drink? Because that's always going to be reducing her oxytocin and bringing her back into the room far too much. So it is important to understand that.
Yeah, okay, fantastic.
And then we wanted to talk a little bit about advocacy, because being the birth partner, your role, part of your role is to make sure that you are the voice for her if that becomes essential. Now, most women can find their voice in labour if they have to. The point is that if you've gone to the trouble of sitting down together, going through her preferences, perhaps writing a birth plan, looking at what she wants in great detail, you know her more than anyone else in that room. If you have care providers with you, you know her to the extent that you can then speak for her and be her voice if that is essential. So if, for example, you arrive at the midwife-led unit, and at the very top of the birth plan is no vaginal examinations. And the midwife turns around and says, "Oh, but how will we know if you're in labour if we don't do a vaginal examination?" Your job as the birth partner is to say, "Oh, it is at the top of the birth plan, and she said no, thank you anyway, but if she changes her mind, we'll come and get you." You shouldn't be in a position where, she is having to constantly repeat herself. If the answer to that question is no, then you can say on her behalf, no. You can take the midwife out of the room and say, "I really hope you don't mind, we're not trying to be rude," but that is a really strong boundary for her. And explain it in a really nice manner. Nobody needs to be offensive or, angry. All you need to do is calmly and quietly express her preferences on her behalf. If you're not comfortable doing that, you need to identify that in pregnancy and then hire a doula, or have someone else come with you to your birth who is willing to speak up for those types of situations.
I think that's really important, isn't it? It's not just being willing to speak up, but it's being willing to do it in a moderated way that doesn't lead to escalation of voices and stress and anxiety and things that we know are going to pull the mother out of her relaxed state. So it takes a bit of thought to decide if you as a birth partner could be that, because as speaking from my experience, you can think about what it's going to be like, but when your partner is in labor, that's different from what you probably thought it was, and it's not easy to be prepared and be the person you're planning to be when you see your partner in labor. That's not easy at all.
No. I had a conversation with somebody recently who told me about her husband and the fact that she was really concerned that he would not take her side in any conversations regarding this kind of thing. And so she said to him before they entered the hospital, she said, "Just you remember, you're coming home with me, not the midwife, not the doctor. You're coming home with me. And we have to live with this birth experience for the rest of our lives. And I want you to have my back. And I expect you to speak up for me. And if I say no, I want you to support me." And he was amazing and he completely got it. But it is very interesting how many partners wouldn't have the woman's back in the end if they thought that the doctor knew best. And the beauty of this summit and the fact that we're talking about natural birth, and all of the guest speakers will, be talking about this, is that when the body is left alone, very little goes wrong. At the end of the day, the purpose of our species is to survive and thrive. Birth isn't dangerous. Birth isn't something that should be feared. It's something that should be respected, and we should be in awe of it, and we should just let it unfold as much as we can, unless something shows us there's a reason to intervene. Just like any other form of medicine, when you consider everything else, you wouldn't go to hospital every day because you might be having a heart attack, because that's a possibility. Unless you show signs, physical signs, nobody would treat you. Unfortunately, the maternity system isn't quite the same. So as a birth partner, overcoming your own fears is essential. And if you don't recognize what your fears are, any underlying ones that might be buried in your subconscious, you need to, really have a think about what kind of birth partner you might make. And if you don't think you could cope with the type of birth she's choosing, then definitely get someone else in.
Yes, that's interesting, isn't it? And so talking about the role of a doula as a birth partner rather than the other parent, I think it's clear that a birth partner is able to be that space keeper, the person protecting the space for the mother. There's a bit of detachment that will no doubt help that process. What about what would you say to as an opportunity for the other parent? Where's the opportunity for the other parent in stepping back and saying, yes, I agree. I think a doula or someone else as the birth partner is a good idea?
I think if you were planning to be at the birth, a doula would probably support you as much, if not more, than the labouring woman, purely because they are there to be that confident, experienced person. And most men will only ever do this once, possibly twice or 3 times, depending on how many children they have. But they're still not going to have had as much experience. So it is really important that, if you did decide to have someone else as part of your team, that you understand they're not there to replace you. They're there to enhance the team that you've got, and they're there to provide, the ability to say, why don't you try this? Or, how about you do it this way? And I think that can be so helpful for most partners. Now, if you're a male birth partner, you've also got the added issue that you have a different, makeup. You are built to be the protector. And as much as we've changed and evolved and, we're all very different these days, and women, don't let men, sort of like run the show all the time, we still have...
Thank goodness.
We still have this innate, inbuilt responsibility that we have, that we can't walk away from. As well, I say we, obviously men. You are going to struggle with your adrenaline levels if there is any fear or danger present, because you will, you're there to protect. And so it can be really hard for men. And I often describe them as looking like rabbits in headlights, because that is what it's like being in a scenario and having someone there to look over the labouring woman's head and see that they're going, it's fine, this is all completely normal, is the most amazing thing for them, to be able to say, she's got this, we know this is normal, this is perfectly okay. And what you often find, especially if you're having a baby in a hospital, is that you are left alone for long periods of time, and it's just you in there with her on your own. And if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to sort of flounder. So I think for a lot of people who have doulas, they are just so pleased that they decided to have someone there who gives them the ability to relax, their adrenaline levels come down, and then the whole thing goes much quicker and easier, purely because everyone is in a much calmer state.
Yes, yeah, I completely see that. Okay, what would you like to say about how a birth partner and a mother can handle the unexpected, things that are not going to plan? There's the observing and the reading of cues, but what else is a good idea in terms of ways to communicate while remaining as undisturbed as possible?
Well, for me, I would always want to have a safety word in place. That is a code word that we've decided upon in pregnancy. And I, use this for over a decade now with my clients, purely because it really supports them to vocalize in labour. One of the things that you may have witnessed yourself, Adam, is that women often vocalize and say things at different stages based on the way that they're feeling, or because they've had a huge surge of adrenaline arrive at perhaps transition. And the tendency for the man to fix it means that they don't really know what to do with that scenario. So if she looks you in the eye and says, I cannot do this anymore, how do you know if she's vocalizing, if she's had a huge surge of adrenaline, or if she genuinely doesn't want to do this anymore? And so having a safety word in place is really essential, because what it means is she can say as many times as she wants, as much as she wants, and as loudly as she wants, that she isn't enjoying the experience, but you don't have to rescue her. You don't have to do anything about it other than say, you are doing it, you're doing great. And if she then turns around and says, no, I'm seriously done, I'm safety wording you, or uses the safety word, you can go, okay, I'm listening. What do we want to talk about now? So plan B, for example, would then be discussed. What is plan B in that moment? Is it just that she wants gas and air? Is it that she wants to get out of the pool and go and have an epidural? Is it that she wants a cesarean? What is she talking about in that moment? What is going on for her, and what can you help her with? If she's having a huge surge of adrenaline and she's in transition, perhaps the next thing to do is have a vaginal examination. Not that I would recommend vaginal examinations, but if she's telling you she wants to get out of the pool and go up to labour ward and have an epidural, perhaps that vaginal examination should be the first thing you do, not the last. So if you're going to be making decisions in that moment, finding out what's going on could be one way of ending up saying, okay, well, look, you're there, we're staying where we are, this baby's coming. And so being able to ascertain what plan B looks like is important. And also what her boundaries are, because, some women will say, I do not want forceps or a Von 2s, for example. I would rather go straight to cesarean section. Well, whatever our thoughts or feelings are about that, it is her body and it is her choice. So understanding that, working that out in advance, knowing what plan B might look like for her, is something that you should do in the pregnancy. But then on the day, you may then have to step up and advocate for that, because it isn't something that she might be offered. You might have to say, no, she definitely doesn't want an assisted birth. What she wants is to go to theatre and have this baby by C-section, or anything on that spectrum, because of course that's a very broad sort of thing that the conversation may go down. But using the BRAIN acronym, everybody's heard of the BRAIN acronym, I'm sure: benefits, risks, alternatives, instincts, and nothing. Being able to go through questions in your mind. You might have been already told the benefits, but you might not have been told the risks. So you might only choose to use one of those questions. You don't have to go through all 5, but you can say, okay, well, thank you so much for sharing that with us. But what are the risks in this scenario? What do we need to know in order to have that ability to make a good, well-informed decision? And then, of course, you can ask them to leave the room whilst you make that decision together. So, if she is saying, I don't want to have X, Y, or Z that's being recommended, you need to be able to have a conversation with each other in private before you inform your care providers of what it is that you'd like to do next. So there's a lot of stuff in the plan B scenario that's important. And the reason for that is because, I'm sure you've heard the expression, a healthy baby is not all that matters. Well, of course, babies matter, and we know that, and we want babies to be safe. Everyone wants the baby to be safe, no one more so than, the parents of the child. But the woman also matters. She matters too, and the experience that she has needs to be respected by not just the care providers, but also the birth partner. Because at the end of the day, when she does get home and she's recovering from her birth experience, she wants to always be able to say, I felt in control of the decisions and I understood what I was deciding on every step of the way. And when people can say that, they very, very rarely would say they had a traumatic experience.
Yes, absolutely. That's absolutely spot on. I think that the thing I'd like to move on to next is about finding in a situation where you have realised you and your birth partner, you and your co-parent have realised that you want to reach out and find a different birth partner, what is it that what are the signals around for example, a doula that you're going to be looking for? How is it you can decide? Because I think it's a big decision. It's as important a decision about where you're going to have your baby and how you're going to do it, etc. So what advice would you give about finding and choosing a professional birth partner?
Well, there's many directories online. Doula UK and other doula training courses offer directories. You could just put into Google or similar, doula near me or doula in my town, the name of the town. And presumably, it will find all of the local doulas to you. On the Doula UK website, there's a find a doula search engine, and you put in your postcode and it gives you all of the local doulas that are in your area. So finding a doula is reasonably easy, looking up the doulas in your area. But how would you choose one? I guess it's really important to just explain your philosophies around birth and make sure that you find somebody that, supports that, because some doulas only want to do some types of birth and some will do anything. For me, for example, I want my clients to have the birth of their dreams. It's got nothing to do with me. So I will support anything. If you said to me, I want a planned cesarean, I'm your girl. If you want a free birth or a home water birth, I'm there for you. Whatever it is that you want, I'm happy to support, because at the end of the day, that is what, I'm there for as a doula and a birth keeper. But not everybody feels that way. So it's important to speak to a few to figure out what it is that you want from a doula. I on my podcast, I interviewed somebody who is a human rights lawyer in a States, Hermine Hayes-Klein, and she talks about, what do you want from your doula? Do you want them to wipe your brow and rub your back? Or do you want them to stop a care provider from doing something to you? Because it's no good having, the doula who is wiping your brow and rubbing your back, and then you don't have a very positive birth experience. And you say, well, why didn't you advocate for me in that moment? Because at the end of the day, you need to make sure that you're clear about what it is that your doula is there for, and especially with the role of the birth partner, because I honestly think if you're open and honest and you say, look, my husband isn't very confident, so therefore you are going to be there to speak up. That is clear. That is, really easy for a doula to be able to say, yes, that's me. You can guarantee I will be that person for you. Or the doula can say, oh, I'm really sorry, but that's not the kind of support I offer. So making sure that you really do understand what you're hiring a doula for is important.
I think that's the theme of this whole discussion, isn't it? That surfacing as much as you can, or everything you can, about what you want, what your aims are, what your hopes are, and informing that through gaining knowledge, information from research and through whether it's a course or your own research, and then surfacing that, having those conversations so that you arrive at the place where you have the right people who understand their role, supporting you, the mother, and because things that aren't right, things that when there are disagreements or fault lines, those are probably going to come out in labour, aren't they? Because it's a time when, things are revealed, aren't they, in labour? The power of women is revealed, for one thing, and mothers is revealed. But those moments, that journey is not forgiving on things that are not discussed or not thought through, or fault lines in relationships. They're going to come to the surface, aren't they, in that situation?
Yeah, definitely. I just think it's really important for anyone to have that time together in the pregnancy to sit down and work it all out and feel like when the day comes, they can relax completely, knowing that the people supporting them have got their back. And that's why I said at the beginning, you know, without the right support, you're better off with no support, because honestly, if they are doing things that irritate you, that wind you up, that make you feel really annoyed and upset, your whole labour experience is going to be awful, because your oxytocin levels won't rise enough and you will not dilate quickly and you'll be exhausted. So I think that for me is really essential. The birth partner needs to understand how to protect the oxytocin in that room. And once they can do that, and once they realize why it's so important to do that and what their role within that means, that birth can go quite smoothly.
On that thought, I think we will conclude, but that has been really great. Thank you, Sallyann. Really appreciate you coming in today.
You're so welcome.
Can you share what people can do if they want to learn more about this topic from you and what you offer as well?
Yeah, so I have my book, Labour of Love, The Ultimate Guide to Being a Birth Partner, which is available on all platforms. You can buy it, you know, on any online resource. And I also have my podcast, which is the Ultimate Birth Partner Podcast, again, on all platforms. So I really would recommend that people take a look at the book and think about, you know, listening to some of the episodes on the podcast. I've got nearly 90 episodes there that they can cherry pick from. So there's lots and lots of information. Right. Which will support them. And the last thing I would say is I do have a website. It's www.birthability.co.uk, and my Instagram is @theultimatebirthpartner.
Fantastic. Lots of things people can follow up with. So appreciate you coming on today. Thank you so much for talking about this crucial topic. And I really hope that both mothers and birth partners or parents can really use this as a route into engaging and making sure that space is created in which the mother can bring her baby, and the baby, perhaps another way to say the baby can bring itself, because to some extent the baby driving the process is part of this picture, that can happen in a beautiful way. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Adam.